The following image was taken on July the 12th, 1863, and it depicts the Baltimore Pike with a large 90-foot tulip poplar tree. This tree was known in Gettysburg for standing alone on this hill near the Evergreen Cemetery gatehouse just across the street. Also in the photograph is a woman with a dress, and then in the distance a medical tent. And today's video is going to be on the tulip poplar tree that once stood here at Gettysburg, a little bit about the tree, the photograph, and of course the tent and the woman in the photograph. Again, the photograph was taken by Frederick Gutenkost on July the 12th, 1863. Today, as we stand in the same position, the area looks like this. Now, the tulip poplar tree can be seen in very many photographs that were taken in 1863 all the way up to its demise in 1876. Some of the more famous photographs that the tulip poplar tree was taken, or shows rather, would be the photograph of the 3 Confederate prisoners. And if you look to the left rear horizon of the 3 Confederate prisoners, you'll see the tree that once stood in this area looming high in the background. You can also see the Evergreen Cemetery gatehouse. A few of the other photographs are taken from the seminary area toward East Cemetery Hill, as well as some photographs that were taken near the National Cemetery site looking at the rear of the Evergreen Cemetery gatehouse in November of 1863, and you can again see the tulip poplar tree without its leaves on it. In this video, we are actually going to walk across the street, and I'm going to show you where the tulip poplar tree once stood and talk about its demise. So we're going to cross the Baltimore Pike here. Today there are 2 other trees, not quite 95 feet tall, but they sit in the general vicinity of where the tulip poplar tree once stood. And I'm going to show you how to get to the site of the tulip poplar tree. We just started filming right there at the Evergreen Cemetery gatehouse. We walked across the street here, and when you walk across the street, you want to pass by the battery here along the Emmitsburg Road to the stone wall. And as you can see in front of us, the stone wall that begins at what we call Tablet Row, which is in the distance behind it. You want to walk about 15 feet on the stone wall until you come to these 2 ball-like boulders that kind of sit here at a height by itself. And this is actually the site of the original tulip poplar tree, which again shot up into the distance of 95 feet and could be seen from all over Gettysburg. Now, a little bit about this tulip poplar tree. It was very well known and seen through the town. Again, photographs that were taken in 1863 all the way up to 1876 showed it. Now, a little bit about the tulip poplar tree's demise. On the night of August the 17th, 1876, a severe thunderstorm that was about 2 hours long hit Gettysburg. The lightning that happened during that thunderstorm that night hit a lot of trees around the town, and one of the trees it hit was the large tulip poplar tree on Cemetery Hill. That tree was very conspicuous. In fact, the Star and Centennial newspaper for August 24th, 1876 was 1 week later, and I quote, "The lightning struck a number of trees around town, among others the large poplar which crowns Cemetery Hill, and for which years has been the most conspicuous object around Gettysburg, being visible for miles from all directions. The tree is about 90 feet high and 10 or 12 feet in circumference near the base of the trunk. The lightning struck a large limb about 30 feet from the top, and passing down shattered and splintered the tree so badly that it will probably die. A large piece was thrown across the pike, a distance of 70 or 80 feet, with sufficient force to break the heavy iron railing around the National Cemetery. So that article from August the 24th, 1876, claims that the tree that stood right there in the center where our two boulders are at actually threw a limb across the street here to the National Cemetery and broke a piece of the iron fence away. Now this is going to be continued on in our next video of the Guten Coast photo of the tulip poplar tree. This has been the tulip poplar tree at Gettysburg, part 1 on Gettysburg this Battlefield. This is going to be the tulip poplar tree, part 2 here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And again, as we look at the Guten Coast photo, this photo has always been labeled as taken between the days of July 10th and July 12th of 1863. I do believe that I have information that this photograph was taken on July 12th, 1863. But first we're going to talk about the woman that's in the photo. That woman is the vivandière of the 114th Pennsylvania, Mary Teppy. Now Mary Teppy was a vivandière who was a female type of civilian sutler soldier that fell in with Zouave regiments during the American Civil War. Though most Zouave regiments had vivandière, not many of them had remained with the unit for their entire course of duty. French Mary was one of those. And of course she would be standing today near where the artillery pieces are today. If you zoom in on the photograph of her, this is her in the photograph zoomed in. And you can look at other pictures of Mary Teppy and definitely pick it out as her. And of course the 114th Pennsylvania fought on July 2nd of 1863 near the Sherfy Farm and the Sherfy Peach Orchard. Also, as you look at the Guten Coast photo, you can see a tent here in the distance. And this is the reason that I believe that I have been able to add to the story and determine the date as July 12th, 1863. I have a letter in my personal collection from a man named Mr. Garced rather, had a son named Joshua Garced. Now Joshua Garced was a member of the 23rd Pennsylvania Volunteers, also known as Bernie's Zouaves. And on July 3rd, 1863, Joshua Garced, Lieutenant of Company B, 23rd Pennsylvania, was killed to the right and rear of Meade's headquarters as the 6th Corps was advancing up the slope, heading toward Meade's headquarters as a reserve for the Union soldiers involved in the repulsing of Pickett's charge. He was struck by a Whitworth shell right near the shoulder, and it nearly decapitated him, killing him instantly. I have 13 letters from Joshua Garced during his service, and also one that his father wrote. And in the letter, it describes a disinfector set up on Cemetery Hill on the evening of the 11th and disinfecting bodies, 2 bodies on July 12th, 1863. One of them about 6:30 in the morning, that morning, and the second one around 11 o'clock in the morning on July 12th, 1863. It is my guess that this photograph by Guten Coast most likely was not taken at 6 o'clock in the morning, but rather sometime after 11 o'clock in the morning. The disinfector's tent is closed in the photograph, meaning that he's probably in there disinfecting the body. The Garced father's letter also says and gives details about the disinfecting process. Joshua Garced's body was brought here to East Cemetery Hill, and he was put in a casket and chlorate of lime was used to remove the odor by the disinfector. And then he was placed in the casket in his lieutenant's uniform, and he was taken rather down the Tawnytown Road to the Michael Fry farm, where he was temporarily buried for about a week until his father arrived here from Roxborough in Philadelphia to take his son's remains back to Philadelphia. So I do believe that the picture of the tent here that shows in this photograph is the actual live disinfecting of Joshua Garcedd's body. Now again, this series, this two-part series, has been on the Tulip poplar tree, which you can see there on the left, a 90-foot tree that once stood here on East Cemetery Hill. We're talking about it today. We're unlocking the secret of its location, also the secret of the woman in the photograph, and now the secret of the tent, and along with the Joshua Garcedd story, have been able to determine the exact, or most likely the exact date of this Frederick Gutenkos picture. Also, I do want to mention, as Joshua Garcedd, Frederick Gutenkos was a Philadelphia photographer. So again, this has been the Tulip Poplar Tree, Part 2